Let's start with the big shocking thing. In terms of value add, if you compare the value of the things that Mexico starts working with to what they actually finish when their exports, they're the highest value add economy in the world. They've got a workforce that is larger and better skilled and with a better industrial plant than the entirety of Central Europe already. In terms of manufacturing, because that's where it gets really sexy, we have offshored our industry a lot because of globalization. And the Chinese have taken full advantage of that by design, because we brought the Chinese into the anti-Soviet coalition during the Cold War. And having the Chinese subsidize, basically pay us to buy their stuff, that was a great deal if you were involved in anything except for American manufacturing. Now, there are a lot of things about Donald Trump I am not a fan of, but NAFTA 2, negotiated in the way that it was, implemented in the way that it was a stroke of genius. It was very, very well done. And in most economic sectors, Mexico is already one of our top 3 trading partners, and overall, they officially passed China this past year to become our #1 trading partner, and that's a position they are unlikely to give up in our lifetimes. Well, now with the Chinese system breaking down and the Mexican system really hitting its stride, a lot of this stuff was already coming back. Mexican workers are very high value add, American workers are very high value add, and with energy and commodity prices all over the place for the last decade, incrementally, we have already been going through the fastest industrialization process in American history. Part of that's the shale revolution. But now that China is experiencing tectonic problems, we should expect the pace of this to accelerate considerably, because we are now in a position where we are likely to lose manufactured goods out of Germany and China at the same time at scale. And so Americans have a very simple choice to make. We can have high inflation and not have goods, or we can build our own industrial plant with the Mexicans and have the fastest economic growth in our history. I mean, this is not a hard decision to make.
It has hallmarks of a failed state because of the narco problem, right?
And no. I would argue at least half of that is our problem, because we really love our cocaine in this country. And as long as that is the case, there is going to be a smuggling route for the cocaine to get in. And the cartels are a very serious threat, and they're becoming more serious. So the background. The Sinaloa cartel has been the most powerful organized crime group in the world for several years, and they have crossed north of the border, and under the Obama administration, they were identified as public enemy #1. And El Chapo, their leader, became our most wanted person. And after a lot of back and forth with the Mexicans, we captured him, he escaped, we captured him again. And now he's serving out multiple lifetime prisons, he'll never see the light of day again. And the Sinaloa cartel is starting to disintegrate. In many ways, that's a problem, because under El Chapo, it was run as a business. Cocaine smuggling is what they did, and so you didn't engage in side businesses. You did not corrupt local government. You did not shoot the locals or rob the locals, because that would encourage people to turn against you. With El Chapo gone, that's kind of fallen apart. It's become a lot more violent, starting to fracture. And a new faction, the Jalisco New Generation cartel, is rising up, and it is hyper-violent. And the first thing they do when they move into a town is shoot a bunch of people. And they run cocaine on the side. They are in the process of challenging the other cartels for control of all the plaza access points on the border, and if they manage to successfully cross at just one of them, well, then white chicks named Debbie and Dallas are going to get shot. And our view of Mexico and the drug war is going to change dramatically in a very short period of time. Part of the problem with the cartels is that in northern Mexico and in southern Mexico, you've got a topography that is relatively difficult for governments to control. So in the north, you've got a high-level desert. In the south, you've got tropics. It's just difficult for states to push their writ in areas like that. That's one of the reasons why central Mexico has, as a rule, been less violent. In that sort of environment, especially when the cartels consider drug running to be their primary source of income, there's nothing that says that it has to overlap with traditional routes, because if you've got one guy with a backpack with 20 pounds of coke, that's a lot of cash. He doesn't need a container to do that. And you can have the two operating side by side with a degree of insulation, and the violence itself is usually never more than 1 or 2% of the physical land area of the country at any given time. So if you got a security team with your operation who knows how to keep their ears to the ground, They can figure out what's coming and when to shut down and who not to deal with, and it can be managed. The challenge moving forward is if Jalisco really does get control of a plaza, the plazas are where the licit goods transfer through, and that's too close. El Chapo and the Sinaloa use those, but they don't interfere with trade because they realize it would be bad for their business. El Mencho and the Jalisco New Generation cartel would probably have a very different operating strategy. Yeah. Right now, they're contested, and most of the violence, almost all the violence, is on the south side of the border. But if they do seize control of one and they have unrestricted access to the United States, that would threaten trade. When you've got a cartel with one dude at the top who's calling all the shots, it's kind of like what's going on in China. If Xi were to die tomorrow, you would have national disintegration in a short period of time because there's no other source of authority. The same with Jalisco New Generation. So if El Mencho were to slip in the shower and fall on some bullets tomorrow, the forecast changed.
Well, you made that point when you were here in Austin as well, talking about the fact that the German industry is decamping for the U.S. and the BASF is one of those companies, right? The biggest chemical maker in Europe, one of the biggest in the world.
Well, and BASF is not just important because it's huge. It's important because it produces the base material that allows all other German manufacturing to happen. Without the Russian natural gas coming in any longer, BASF knows that its economic viability within Germany is already over, and so they're relocating everything they can to primarily Louisiana, because that's where the natural gas is. But
Right.
that won't save the rest of Germany. But the key thing to remember about the United States-Mexico relationship is we have different skill sets. We're good at different things, we're good at different price points, and whenever you're doing a manufacturing system, you need different labor skill sets at different price points, and the border region is perfect for that. Canada, not so much. Canada's quality of work is very similar to the United States. Their cost of labor is very similar to the United States. And so Ontario can integrate with the lower 48 like it was a 49th state, and that's not nothing. But the room for growth is limited because it's not taking advantage of a dramatic change in the international environment like Mexico will be. Canada is simply an already integrated part of the American economy. Mexico is filling a need that we haven't had until very recently. The only way we get fresh labor into the Canadian system is immigration, and they're the world's leader at attracting immigrants on a per capita basis. But they're also on a bit of a treadmill because they bring in people in their 30s and their 40s who drop a lot of cash, buy some property, distort the local markets, and then, especially recently, move on. So we've had a huge amount of Chinese capital go in and distort. A lot of people who were born in Canada can't afford to live in Canada, but the Chinese that come in are dropping their money but not working there. So they're getting all of the distortions and none of the advantages to the labor market. The same thing happened in New Zealand, and so the Kiwis and the Canadians have now barred foreign purchases of their property. Australia and the United States at the present have not done that. So we're going to be seeing a little bit more concentration of that kind of distortion in some of the gateway markets.